I'm hearing a lot of people say this market is changing so fast. Oh my gosh. But how does it actually compare to this time last year? And what does that even mean for buyers and sellers? I'm so glad you asked. Happy Wednesday, everybody. It's Brian Simmons here with eXp Realty. It is June 8th, and I'd like to remind you real quick to please subscribe, like, and share this channel and video with your friends on social media. I'd really, really appreciate that. Let's go ahead and dive right into the data real quick and take a look at what happened over the last 7 days. As we sit right now, 1,036 active single-family residential listings between Jackson and Josephine counties, okay? Over the last 7 days, we saw 167 new listings hit the market, 159 price changes, 39 go back on the market, 137 went pending, 100 closed, and 48 were either expired, withdrawn, or canceled and went off of the market, okay? That all brings us to a 10-week worth of inventory situation, which is the first time we've gone above 10 weeks in a long time. And that's if you just base a snapshot on just that 1 week. So relatively high numbers in terms of new listings and price changes and pendings. Okay, so all of those are above our 6-week average. So love seeing that the pendings are above the 6-week average. Closings are definitely low. That's lower than we've seen in a while, but it's not uncommon to have some random kind of dips here and there on closings due to whether it was holiday weekends or whatever could have taken place to cause it. So I'm not really too worried about that. It's also more of a lagging measure because of 45-day, on average escrows. So it tells us more of what happened 45 days ago than it does what happened this week. Okay. But what I really want to look at is a year-over-year comparison of how these numbers are comparing to what they were doing last year. Okay. And I want to just kind of talk through that for a little bit. So if you look at total inventory for this exact time last year versus this year, okay, we just talked about we have 1,036 on the market today. Last year, this time we had 512. So we're just over double. Okay, so that's obviously a big gain to get to that point. If we were to look at just 6-week averages, and I like to look at 6-week averages because I think it takes out those dips like we just talked about where we had only 100 closings over the last 7 days. That's a dip, and I expect that to probably pick back up next week. So a 6-week measure or 6-week average kind of normalizes all of that, and I think it's a better measure to take a look at. So if we look at 6-week averages last year versus this year for the same period from, let's call it, first week of May to now, we have slightly more new listings than we had this time last year. We were averaging 163 this year. Last year we were averaging 153. So that's a change of about 6%. Okay, 6% more this year than last year. We have slightly less pendings and closings this year versus last year. On the pending side, 131 versus 137. So again, about a 4% difference. And on the closing side, 112 versus 117 last year. And again, 4%. So not substantial differences, really, in my mind. 4% is not a massive change. So that's kind of how the data looks. If you look at a 6-week snapshot comparison, and I think that's probably surprising to some people because they're hearing all this over and over and over. It's changing so fast, it's changing so much, and what the data says is that it's really changed 4% in terms of looking at pendings and 6% if you're looking at new listings. That's not that big of a change in my mind. What's also changed, though, is the average sales price. And if you look again at that same 6-week chunk from the beginning of May to now, and you average the sales prices last year versus this year, what we saw was a 4% gain in the average sales price last year versus this year. And what's important to note is that the interest rate on the mortgages has gone up from, call it 3% to 5.5%. So 4% gain in value despite a 2.5% increase in the mortgage rate. That's pretty crazy to think about. And I would say that's a really good testament to how healthy our market is and how strong it is. If you can withstand a gain like that in interest rate and what that effect does to affordability, if you can withstand that and continue to see the average sales price increase, that's pretty telling. One thing I wanted to say is that I am a little surprised that we're continuing to see as many new listings hit the market as we are, and to see that even outpace where we were last year. Okay, last year it was craziness of you're going to get multiple offers, you're going to sell it overnight, in theory, right? And that's not happening as much this year. Yet we're still getting more new listings than we had last year. That's a little bit surprising to me, and I would expect that to probably level off at some point soon. But we'll see. Maybe not. Really, what the question becomes though is whether or not buyer demand is going to stay strong and continue to demand the new listings from the sellers. And that's what really blows my mind though, is why wouldn't the buyer demand stay strong? And that's what I really wanted to kind of get into is what that means for buyers. Why wouldn't it stay strong? So if you're a buyer, here's what you need to know. It is undoubtedly an absolutely fantastic time to buy. And I don't want you to just take my word for it. I want to explain to you why that is. So let's just address the elephant in the room right now. Mortgage rates are higher than they've been in a very, very long time. Okay. And they're about 5.5%. So if you're in that camp who thinks that rates will continue to rise, okay, then what the heck are you waiting for to buy, right? If rates go, are you waiting for prices to drop? Because if rates go up another percent from 5.5% to 6.5%, you would need a 10% drop in home values to offset everything and maintain the same payment, right? So is that what you're waiting for? We just talked about how values went up 4% over the last year, despite a 2.5% gain in mortgage rates. So if you're thinking that rates are going to go up, it really makes a lot of sense to buy now before that happens, and before home values continue to go up even further. On the other side of the coin, if you think that rates are going to come down, it still makes sense to buy because you'll have an opportunity to refinance at a lower rate in the near future. And that's what I think is going to probably happen. So I would be with you on that. Keep in mind, again, how we just talked about prices are appreciating at 4%. Okay, despite a 2.5% change in the rate from 3 to 5.5. Okay, so at 4% appreciation, a $500,000 home today is going to be $520 next year. Okay, so if you think the rates are going to come down, right, you might as well buy now before the home price goes up. That's kind of a good way to look at it. Because if it did do that, if it goes from 500 to 520, that's and even if the rates stay the exact same, that's $100 a month payment difference. Okay, it would cost you $100 more a month next year if you wait. Reason number two for why I think it's a phenomenal time to buy is because there's more inventory on the market right now. Okay, so what that means is less competition. That means you have a better chance of buying without getting into a multiple offer situation and getting the price bid up. It means that there's a chance that you can negotiate with the seller and maybe get them to do some repairs. There's a chance you can negotiate with them on price and maybe get the home at a price less than the asking price. And there's also a chance, and here's a big one, that you could get the seller to contribute towards your closing costs and use that money to buy down your rate. Okay, so if you're afraid of rates being high, let's talk about that strategy where we could buy your rate down possibly by having the seller contribute towards your closing costs. That's a really, really effective strategy right now. And the last reason is, like I said, because inventory is increased, you actually have some options to choose from. You don't have to race out the door the second something hits the market like you did this time last year. I mean, it's still not a terrible idea to go see it quickly, but the chances are, maybe you can wait till tomorrow. Maybe you can wait till the weekend and still go see it. All right. It's not as wild and crazy as it was like last year when there was, less than half the inventory. Okay. So all of those three reasons are why I believe as a buyer, it makes a ton of sense to still buy right now. And aside from some sort of like special circumstance or unique situation, I really can't think of any reason why it wouldn't make sense to buy right now. So if you're one of those and you know of a reason, you're like, hey, you totally missed this, please, by all means, make a comment on wherever you're watching this video. If it's Facebook or YouTube, just make a comment. Let's discuss it. I'd love to hear that from you. And I'm not, I miss things sometimes, but I think that, when you look at the data and you look at the market, it is a great time to buy. So if you think of a reason why it's not, let me know. So if you're considering selling, on the other hand, it still makes a lot of sense to sell at this time. All right. Because the sales prices are continuing to rise, albeit at a slower pace than they were last year, there's still a good amount of demand. Okay. It's not as crazy, like I said, as it was last year, where you would potentially get multiple offers and sell it in a weekend and all that. But as I mentioned, I mean, there's still a good amount of pending and closed transactions happening, only 4% less than this time last year. Okay, so what I would say is most important thing for you to know as a seller is this: like, great time to sell, however, not the time to shoot for the moon on your price. Okay, if your neighbor sold for 500,000 last week, you don't want to say, "Well, let's try 550." Not a good time to do that, right? It is a good time to sell and try 500, just like they sold for, or somewhere right near it. If you want to sell right now, be realistic about your price. We'll look at comps and we'll determine what is, the market likely to say. And then you have to listen to the market. If you put it on the market and you try something and you get nothing, you hear crickets, it's time to reduce the price. Okay. The market is telling you that we're not going to pay that much. But the reality is, as a seller, it is a good time because you can take the chips off the table. Okay, you can realize those massive gains that you've seen over the last few years, and you can roll that into something else that, maybe if you want to upsize or downsize or whatever the case is, it's just a good way to take advantage of the equity that you've already created. It's a good way to take advantage of the recent rise in home values over the last several years. They've just blown up. And it's just a good way to take advantage of all that, to take some of those chips off the table. So there's still a lot of buyer demand out there, still a great time to sell and to realize those gains. Okay. That's all I have for you today. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this channel with your family and friends. Be sure to check out the full version of the newsletter so you can see my favorite listings. You can see some buyer needs that I have, and maybe some of those buyer needs match up to what you have. And maybe we can sell it before it ever hits the market. That still happens. As always, if there's anything in the world I could do for you, please don't hesitate to reach out. Call me, text me, 541-954-7758, and I'd be happy to help you. See you next week.